Welcome to Zenith History. In today's episode, we're going to delve deep into one of the most iconic stories in human history, the story of Adam and Eve. For centuries, this biblical tale has been at the heart of many religious traditions. But what if I told you that the story of Adam and Eve has roots that go beyond the pages of the Bible? The idea of the first man and woman, created by a divine being, is not unique to Christianity or Judaism. Today, we're exploring the true origins of the Adam and Eve story, tracing its influences across ancient cultures and uncovering how it evolved into the version we know today. So sit back, because we're about to travel back in time to the very beginning. Most of us are familiar with the story from the book of Genesis. In this account, God creates Adam from the dust of the earth, and then, seeing that Adam is lonely, creates Eve from one of Adam's ribs. The two live in paradise in the Garden of Eden. But when they disobey God by eating the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they are cast out, setting the stage for the human condition as we know it. But this story, while central to the Abrahamic faiths, may have origins that predate the Bible itself. To understand the true origins of Adam and Eve, we need to look at the ancient Near East, where civilizations like the Sumerians and Babylonians developed their own creation myths long before the book of Genesis was written. One of the most striking parallels to the Adam and Eve story can be found in the ancient Sumerian myth of Enki and Ninhursag. In this myth, the god Enki eats forbidden plants from the sacred garden of Dilmun, a paradise much like Eden. Enki's actions bring a curse upon him, causing his body to fall ill. To save him, the goddess Ninhursag creates goddesses to heal each part of his body. One of these goddesses, created to heal his rib, is named Ninti, which in Sumerian means Lady of the Rib. Interestingly, Ninti can also mean Lady of Life, drawing a parallel to Eve, whose name in Hebrew means life. This connection between the rib and life, along with the concept of a divine garden, suggests that the Adam and Eve story may have borrowed elements from this older Sumerian myth. Another fascinating precursor to the Adam and Eve story is found in the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish. While this text primarily focuses on the creation of the world and the rise of the god Marduk, it reflects the broader mythological environment in which stories of divine creation were circulating. The Babylonians, like the Sumerians before them, believed in a cosmic garden, a sacred space where the gods dwelled. This idea of a divine garden was widespread in the ancient Near East and likely influenced the development of the Eden narrative in the Hebrew Bible. But the story of Adam and Eve is not just about the creation of humanity. It's also about the origin of human suffering, sin, and the loss of innocence. In this regard, it shares similarities with another ancient myth, the Greek story of Prometheus and Pandora. According to Greek mythology, Prometheus defied the gods by stealing fire from Mount Olympus and giving it to humanity, an act that brought knowledge but also suffering. As punishment, the gods created Pandora, the first woman, and gave her a jar, later referred to as Pandora's box, which she was forbidden to open. Of course, curiosity got the best of her, and when she opened the jar, she unleashed all the evils of the world, leaving only hope inside. Like the story of Adam and Eve, this Greek myth is about the consequences of disobedience and the introduction of suffering into the world. Now let's return to the Bible. The story of Adam and Eve, as we know it today, was likely written down during the Babylonian exile, a period in the 6th century BCE, when the Jewish people were living in captivity in Babylon. During this time, the Jewish exiles would have been exposed to Babylonian mythology, including the Enuma Elish and other creation stories. It's not hard to imagine how these stories might have influenced the development of their own creation narrative. The Hebrews, like many other ancient peoples, sought to explain the origins of the world, humanity, and the presence of evil, and they did so using familiar cultural motifs, sacred gardens, divine beings, forbidden knowledge, all of which were part of the broader mythological traditions of the ancient Near East. But the story of Adam and Eve isn't just a reworking of older myths. It has its own unique elements, especially in its moral and theological implications. Unlike the Sumerian and Babylonian gods, who are often portrayed as capricious and self-serving, The God of Genesis is deeply concerned with human morality. The story of the fall is not just about disobedience, it's about the introduction of moral choice. Adam and Eve's decision to eat from the tree of knowledge represents humanity's first moral act, the choice to defy divine authority and pursue independent knowledge. This idea of free will and moral responsibility is a central theme in the Judeo-Christian tradition and distinguishes the biblical narrative from its ancient predecessors. Another unique aspect of the Adam and Eve story is the role of the serpent. In the ancient Near East, serpents were often symbols of wisdom and fertility. But in the biblical account, the serpent is cast as the antagonist, the one who tempts Eve into disobedience. Some scholars believe that the serpent in the Garden of Eden may have been influenced by older mythological figures like the Mesopotamian god Ningish-Zida, a serpent deity associated with the underworld and the tree of life. In this context, the biblical serpent represents not just temptation, but the dangerous pursuit of knowledge that comes with moral consequences. It's also important to note that the story of Adam and Eve has evolved over time and has been interpreted in various ways throughout history. Early Christian thinkers like St. Augustine would later develop the doctrine of original sin, arguing that Adam and Eve's disobedience brought sin and death into the world, a concept that would have profound implications for Christian theology. However, this idea of original sin doesn't appear explicitly in the Hebrew Bible, and likely reflects later theological developments rather than the original intent of the story. So where does that leave us when it comes to understanding the true origins of Adam and Eve? On one level, the story is a profound religious and moral allegory that addresses the human condition, our origins, our choices, and the consequences of those choices. But on another level, it's clear that the story of Adam and Eve didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was shaped by centuries of storytelling, myth-making, and cultural exchange. From the sacred gardens of the Sumerians to the cautionary tales of the Greeks, the story of Adam and Eve is part of a rich tapestry of ancient mythological traditions. In the end, the true origins of Adam and Eve lie not just in the book of Genesis, but in the broader context of ancient Near Eastern mythology and the universal human desire to explain our place in the world. So the next time you hear the story of Adam and Eve, remember that it's a story with deep roots, connecting us to the myths and legends of civilizations long past. If you enjoyed this exploration into the origins of Adam and Eve, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Zenith History for more deep dives into the fascinating stories of our past. Let us know in the comments what you think about the ancient influences on the story of Adam and Eve, and if there are other myths or legends you'd like us to explore. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.